fortunes this fall.
Maryland Democratic Congressman Steny is the majority leader in the House, and he joins us now. Congressman Hoyer, I want to play you a bite from the Vice President earlier today about Washington. Take a listen.
Washington right now is broken. I don't ever recall a time in my career where to get anything done you needed a super majority, 60 out of 100 senators. I've never seen it this dysfunctional. I'm trying to get the other team to cooperate, to get in the game here a little bit. I understand the political motivation, but I think if people say the message out of Massachusetts election was to the Democrats, I think it was to everybody in public life.
Congressman, it seems like there's universal agreement these days among the public that there is something wrong with Washington. But what responsibility do you take in this? Do House Democrats, being in the majority in Congress, do you accept any responsibility for this broken Washington?
Well, Chuck, I think we all have responsibility, but in many respects what the Vice President was saying when he says Washington is broken, he then talked about needing 50%. Of course, in the House of Representatives, we only need 50%. The House of Representatives, according to Norman Ornstein and other observers, had one of the most productive sessions, frankly, in recent times last year. And in fact, the Congress was productive in some respects because the President signed into law some very significant pieces of legislation. However, I believe the Senate is broken. I don't think it's Harry Reid's fault, the Democratic leader. What I think it is the Republican leadership has determined that failure and gridlock are to its political benefit, and as a result, we've had more requests for cloture or filibuster votes than at any time in history. That has brought, in effect, the Senate's ability to do its business to a standstill sometimes and to a slow walk at others. So that we need to get legislation moving up or down, and if the majority of the United States Senate don't agree with the legislation, it ought to fail. But if a majority agree, it ought to pass. The problem is they can't get it to the floor under the procedures that the Senate is operating under. A lot of people are frustrated by that.
Yeah, and you know, given your concerns about Senate process, I want to ask you about health care reform and whether you'll insist that the Senate pass a fix by reconciliation before the House passes any health care bill that the Senate had already passed. I know that there was a kind of a two-track plan, but that Speaker Pelosi and perhaps yourself were really insisting that the Senate do its fix first before the House would pass the health care bill.
Savannah, what we're trying to do is see if we can get agreement between the Senate and House bills. They were different. The normal process is to go to conference. We haven't been able to do that, so we're working together to see if we can reach common ground. If we can reach common ground, we think that common ground ought to be enacted first before we pass either the Senate or the House bill. The suggestion has been to, in effect, put into place an agreed resolution between the differences between the two houses and then pass the Senate bill through the House. That is a procedure I think we could follow, and if we can reach agreement, it perhaps is a procedure we will follow. But the objective, obviously, is to get agreement between the two houses and enact that into law and send it to the President.
I mean, does that reflect, though, a basic mistrust by the House of the Senate, that the House has time and time again taken tough votes only to see the Senate not come through? I mean, you could take the jobs bill. The House passed a $150 billion jobs bill, and the Senate is now considering and may pass a $15 billion jobs bill.
Well, clearly the experience, I don't know whether it's a mistrust, but experience is a good teacher, that oftentimes the House has been able to pass legislation which we think is necessary and needed, send it to the Senate, and the Senate's been unable to move, again, primarily because of the Republicans' use of filibuster to stop legislation. So I think it's accurate to say, want to say mistrust or experience. There is not a sense that unless the Senate acts, that we can count on them doing so.
You say primarily, but are you really saying that 40 Republicans or 41 Republicans are outmaneuvering Harry Reid, Dick Durbin, and Chuck Schumer? They are outmaneuvering them that much, even though those guys have 59 or 60 votes at any given moment? Is that what you're saying here, that the Republican leadership and the minority is just simply outmaneuvering the Democratic leadership?
No, I'm not saying that, Chuck. I'm saying that, frankly, the Republican leadership is abusing a process which was used relatively infrequently in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s and 90s, but has escalated the usage of this requirement requirement that every move of the Senate requires 60 votes. The Founding Fathers didn't have that in mind. That's when people vote in elections, they expect the majority is going to prevail in our country. But it doesn't prevail in the United States Senate. So it's not that Senator Reid is being outmaneuvered. It is that the rules that exist have precluded him from moving as he would like to present the United States Senate with options that they can vote up or down. And Chuck, as you well know, as well as I do, clearly the Democratic Party is a broad-based party, and there are some Democrats who don't agree with certain propositions. That's proper. They're representing their states and their views, so that we don't always have, even when we had 60 senators, but we, I think, almost invariably had a significant majority of those who were supportive of propositions, but could not get the opportunity to vote on those.
Right.
Congressman, very quickly before we have to let you go, I want to read you a quote from one of your colleagues, Congressman Bruce Braley of Iowa. He said, quote, "The biggest problem is I don't think that a lot of people in Congress fear the president." Do you agree with that statement? Do you think the president needs to get in there and crack skulls?
I don't think it's being fearful of the president. Is a question of agreeing with the president or not agreeing with the president. I think the president has been engaged. I think he's been working hard. I think he's reached out to Democrats, certainly reached out to Republicans. And again, I want to emphasize, we had one of the most productive sessions in a very, very long time in the United States House last year. And in fact, it was a relatively productive session. A bill signed into law. Today is the date on which we note the passage of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act.
By the way, you just brought that up. Was that a jobs bill or not?
Certainly it was a jobs bill. No, it was a jobs bill. As a matter of fact, Chuck, if you look at the statistics, whether you're looking at jobs, which we've gone from losing 726,000 the last quarter of the Bush administration to only losing 35,000 this last quarter, that's progress. We need to create jobs, not just lose less. Stock market is up over 50% since we passed the Recovery Act, and GDP went from a 6.4% decline in the last quarter of the Bush administration to a 5.7% increase this last quarter. So it's very difficult to say that was not a significant success. And the New York Times says private sector analysts say it added 1.6 to 1.9 million new jobs. That was a very significant jobs bill.
Congressman Hoyer,
but we need to do more. We need to do more, Chuck, and we're going to be focused on jobs and growing the economy over the next weeks and months.
We'll be following it over the next couple of weeks. We hope to have you back, Congressman Hoyer, the House Majority Leader. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Okay. Good luck.
You got it. Coming up.